Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I want to show you a really cool checkmate problem that I got through my Discord server. So take a second here, see if you can find any checks, any forcing moves. You had a few checks in the air with the knight, with the bishop, with the queen, and of course with the pawn. And think about all those checks and see how deeply you can calculate out, right? Look at every single check and start from there. Okay, before I show the solution to this, I would just quickly remind you to subscribe if you have not yet already. We're almost at 4,000 subscribers, and I really want to push and get that 4,000. So thank you to those who have subscribed, and thank you for those who are just watching. Everybody, I appreciate it. Okay, so right now, the first thing I'm thinking is to look at bishop a6. And bishop a6 looks good at first because you might notice if the king goes up the board, you have a mate because the knight and the bishop control these squares around the king. Great. But, of course, the king does not have to run up the board. Instead, it can go back, and you don't have anything here. You might think you have a check, but the king just runs away, and it's going to be perfectly safe over on the E and F file. So although bishop a6 looks good at first glance, it doesn't actually work because the king is not forced up the board. Instead, they go back. So bad move, good move. Okay, well, what about the other checks, like a knight check, knight e5? What about this move? Well, in all of these cases, you're not really getting away from c3. c3 is the reason why a lot of these don't work, because I go here, and the king just runs away. And you don't have any nice tactic, like this kind of thing, where you take and like you fork, because first of all, they can take with the bishop, and second of all, even if you could fork the king and the queen, you're down 2 rooks. So just think about it, larger view, only trade if you feel like it's advantageous to you. Okay, same thing applies to this side, right? You go knight a5 check, the king goes back, and if you check here, or if you check here, it doesn't lead to anything. King can always go back. You could always move a pawn or move a queen, interpose, even e5, nothing wrong with that. Okay. And then the same thing goes with this pawn move. I play pawn check. Maybe the idea is get the bishop out this way. Maybe try to attack on this square. So you could get away with taking this. You could also just walk right back. An important note here, if the king goes here, for whatever reason, they go closer to your army, queen b6 check. And where does the king go? Well, look at where they can go. Only one square, king a4. And what happens here? Not here, don't mate them here, that's not mate. Instead, right here will work, right? So they have to be careful, they can't just get away with everything. So maybe you're noticing some of those sub-variations of these tricky, these tricky moves. But the one move, the showstopper, the fancy move in this position is to give up your queen right on c5. You might say, what? They can just take this. And you're right, they can take it. But they can no longer go to c6, or sorry, c3. I'm still thinking about it from white side. So, okay, they take it. Now what? How do you follow up with this? Do you check them with this pawn? If you do that, does that work? No, because although, again, it looks good, you take here and this check does not win because they can walk away. They don't have these squares, but they have these ones, right? And, of course, they could take the pawn. So, great. What's the follow-up then? After you just leave your queen hanging, do you play this one? Now you're checking them on this diagonal, and this, here it is. This knight is attacking these squares, but it doesn't save you because king b5, king c4, they're not amounting to any checkmate. So even this, like, again, where do they go? The only place they can go, only sensible place that is, king c3. They don't want to get mated like before. So, okay. So what is the move? In this position, this is probably the harder move to find because I told you it was a checkmate, so you already looked for those forcing moves. So if you already got this far, great job. But now the question is, where is the move here? Where's the move for this checkmate? Because of course you see the sacrifice. Everybody looks for those in the puzzles. You know it's a puzzle. But what's the move here? So it's kind of a quiet move. I think that's what makes this puzzle really cool. It's a very simple, very quiet move. Bishop to a6. Now what is this move doing? This move is creating a little mating net around the king. Let's just look at this bishop and look at what it's controlling. Okay, b5, c4, and of course these squares, but we're not caring about that. And this knight is working perfectly with this bishop to control the complementary dark squares around it, right? So now what's the threat here? Well, the threat is to check the king, but not with d6. We don't want to check with this one. We want to check with e6. Why? What's the difference? Well, e6 will cover this square with this pawn, and it will give me a check on the diagonal. And the beautiful thing in this position is white knows the plan and cannot prevent it at all. And that's actually a common theme in amazing plans, is your opponent knows them, but they can't prevent them. And in this position, there's no move for white. You can play anything. You can play a pawn move, you can play a queen move, you can play anything you want. And I'm going to play e6, and that's checkmate. You can't interpose, you can't take the bishop. There's nothing you can do in that one move. So the mate in 3 kicks off with this stunning queen c5. They have nowhere else to go. They can't refuse the sacrifice, decline the sacrifice. You take it. And then this very quiet, nice move, you just slide it carefully on the board. Bishop a6, cutting off this square, perfectly coordinated with the knight. Look at this, and then the next move is going to be e6 no matter what. You can play your favorite move. I don't know, knight here. You can't take this pawn because it's the rook, or sorry, it's the bishop that's checking the king. So a really good one there. I think it's worth your time to look at those forcing moves. They are hard to find, but if you look at these puzzles, try to evaluate this in your own game. Always check for forcing moves, even if a position like this where you're down 10 points of material. Just look for the forcing moves. You might catch your opponent in a nice mating net, especially when their king is on c4 in the middle of the board. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like it, subscribe. All that stuff helps me out so much. But until next time, thank you so much. Bye.